Southeast Asia is right in the middle of one of the most incredible transformations happening on the planet today. Its cities are growing at a truly mind-blowing pace, and that's creating this massive test of resilience, of innovation, and of planning. So let's dive into what this huge urban challenge really means for the future of the entire region. Okay, to really wrap your head around the scale of what we're talking about, let's just start with a number: 90 million. By 2030, that's how many additional people are expected to be living in ASEAN cities. Think about that. That's like adding the entire population of Vietnam to the urban landscape in just a handful of years. It's a staggering figure, and it really sets the stage for everything we're about to talk about. So, to unpack this really complex story, we're going to follow a five-part journey. We'll start with the Great Migration itself, then we'll look at the pressure it's putting on cities, we'll examine how global headwinds are making things even trickier, before exploring the blueprint for a successful future and, the inspiring solutions that are already taking shape. First up, the Great Urban Migration. And let me tell you, this isn't just some trend, it's an unprecedented demographic tidal wave. And it's happening faster in Southeast Asia than almost anywhere else on Earth. What's so fascinating here is that we're watching a fundamental rewiring of society happen right before our eyes. For the first time, city dwellers are on the verge of outnumbering the rural population. The urban population is growing at over 2% a year, while rural populations are actually starting to shrink. This is it, the great shift from the farm to the city playing out in real time. So what happens when you cram millions and millions of new people into cities that are already struggling to keep up? Well, you get immense pressure. Let's dig into the growing pains of this explosive expansion. And this image just nails the core problem. A huge amount of this growth is totally unplanned and unstructured. I want you to picture sprawling settlements, tangled infrastructure, and public services that are stretched to their absolute breaking point. This isn't just messy, it creates these deep, systemic challenges for the people who actually live there. And the data? Well, it paints a pretty stark picture. Back in 2014, over 62 million people, that's more than a quarter of the total urban population in these countries, were living in informal settlements. Just look at Cambodia, where over half the urban population lived in these conditions. We're talking about whole communities that lack reliable access to the basics, like clean water, sanitation, and secure housing. But here's a really crucial shift in perspective. The thinking is we shouldn't just see these as slums of despair. Instead, we should see them as slums of hope. And you might ask, why? Well, because these are places filled with people who are actively working to escape poverty, to build a better life, often with this incredible entrepreneurial spirit. The aspiration is there in spades. The challenge is getting the support and infrastructure to catch up. And the pressures just keep piling on. Malaysia is short 1 million affordable homes. Traffic congestion is so bad, it literally shaves off up to 5% of the national GDP. And on top of all that, you have environmental threats, like land subsidence that are literally sinking coastal megacities like Jakarta and Bangkok. It really is a perfect storm of challenges. Now, as if all those internal pressures weren't enough, cities now have to navigate a whole new set of global headwinds. The world is just getting more complex, and that has a direct impact on how cities in ASEAN can develop. And this brings up a critical question, right? A city might have the perfect local plan, but what happens when big global events just come in and completely interfere? This slide just lays it out so clearly. The ideal, of course, is open markets, free trade that drives investments and lowers prices for everybody. But the reality, for several years now, has been one of trade wars and tariff uncertainty. For a business that's looking to invest, that uncertainty is poison. It messes up supply chains and makes them think twice about committing capital, fragmenting the very global trade that these cities really depend on. So you get this mix of geopolitical friction and economic slowdowns, and it just adds layer after layer of complexity. It forces these nations to get creative, to diversify their trade partners, and to build strategies that don't just rely on one or two major markets. They've got to be more agile than ever before. So, given this incredibly challenging picture, you might be asking, what's the way forward? Well, thankfully, there is a plan. Let's take a look at the blueprint for building sustainable ASEAN cities. So the ASEAN Sustainable Urbanization Strategy, or ASUS, it identifies 4 key pillars. They call them enablers that are absolutely essential for success. You can think of them as the 4 legs of a table: dynamic governance, integrated planning, innovative finance, and inclusive digitalization. Okay, so what in the world is dynamic governance. It's not about top-down commands. It's really about collaboration. It's about city governments working hand in hand with national leaders, with local communities, with businesses, to make sure that a local flood prevention plan, for instance, also lines up with huge global goals like the Paris Agreement on climate change. It's about getting everyone pulling in the same direction. And this, right here, is the big strategic shift at the heart of the whole blueprint. The goal is to stop being reactive, just patching up problems as they pop up, and become proactive. It's about using smart, integrated planning to guide growth and build sustainable, resilient systems before the crises hit. Okay, enough with the theory. Let's see how this blueprint is actually being turned into reality. Because right now, across the region, cities are already putting these ideas into practice in some really fascinating ways. Take Seberang Perai in Malaysia, for example. It's a low-lying coastal city, so it's extremely vulnerable to flooding. But instead of just building a bigger wall, the city council tried a participatory approach, bringing everyone to the table, citizens, experts, businesses, to build a citywide consensus on how to tackle climate change head-on. And this kind of innovation is popping up everywhere. In Thailand, you've got the Ban Mekong program, which empowers poor communities to secure their own land and upgrade their own housing. Over in Vietnam, they're using nature itself, restoring mangroves and sand dunes to protect coastal cities. And Kayawan in the Philippines proves you don't have to be a mega capital to be a leader in smart digital innovation. And here, we can see the power of innovative finance in action. In Lao PDR, a microfinance portfolio of $88 million has empowered over 250,000 poor households. Now, this isn't a handout. It's capital for starting small businesses, for funding education, for building more secure lives. It delivers incredible returns for entire communities. And finally, let's look at digitalization, because the growth is just explosive. In Cambodia, internet use went from practically zero in 2008 to a third of the entire population just a decade later. This opens up amazing opportunities for smart services, economic growth, the whole shebang. But, and this is a really big but, it also creates the risk of a digital divide. And what that means is a child who can't get online for school falls behind, or a small business owner can't reach new customers. So the key is making sure this growth includes everyone. Which brings us to our final question. The scale of urbanization in ASEAN is, without a doubt, one of the greatest challenges the region has ever faced. But with smart planning, with innovative solutions, and with a real focus on inclusiveness, the question remains, could this also become its single greatest opportunity? The future of millions and millions of people depends on the answer.